Ever feel like you're stuck in a rut when it comes to problem solving? Like some people just get AT.
Right.
Well, today we're diving into how to unlock that inner problem solver we all have. We're exploring the ideal problem solver, this guide that breaks down like the science behind tackling challenges effectively. So get ready to ditch those mental roadblocks. We're about to uncover some seriously surprising habits that lead to those aha moments.
Hmm.
And one of the first myths this deep dive busts, you don't need to be a genius with a sky-high IQ to be a problem-solving pro,
Yeah, it's not about raw brain power,
right?
The research actually emphasizes that it's more about how you approach those problems, the thinking patterns you build up.
And they illustrate this really well with the story of William Eno, the guy who basically invented modern traffic flow as we know it.
Oh, wow.
Stop signs, traffic lights, crosswalks, all Eno. And it all came from this deep frustration with New York City's traffic back in the day. Horse-drawn carriages everywhere, total gridlock,
I can imagine chaos.
total chaos.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is Eno didn't just see congestion. He saw patterns.
Huh.
The source material talks about how obsessed he was with movement, how things flowed or
Yeah.
didn't in the city.
That's so interesting.
It is. And it's a key takeaway for us, too. How can we train ourselves to spot those patterns in our own lives?
Yeah.
Whether it's at work, in relationships,
Yeah.
even just our routines.
Yeah, if you think. Right.
Totally. It's like he had this superpower of observation, but it's one we can all develop.
I like that.
Think about it. You're stuck in a traffic jam. Are you just annoyed?
Yeah.
Or are you analyzing the flow, looking for that one thing causing the backup?
Oh, that's good.
That's Eno's approach.
I love it.
And the book calls this practical intelligence, using your experience, your observations, to navigate real situations, not some big, complicated idea.
Totally. It's about, connecting the dots, right?
Exactly. And that expertise, they point out, isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's not about being a walking encyclopedia. They use this great example of a chess master versus a computer programmer.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Both incredibly skilled, obviously, but their expertise shows up so differently.
Oh, for sure.
The chess master excels at strategy, thinking 10 steps ahead. The programmer might be amazing at breaking down these huge, complex problems into, elegant lines of code.
Totally different skill set.
Exactly. It's all about understanding the nuances of your own field, your own way of thinking.
I like that.
So here's a question for you, dear listener.
Mm-hmm.
What's your area of expertise? What are those problems you're uniquely equipped to solve? Because this deep dive, it's all about giving you the tools to tap into that even more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you've used those observation skills, that practical intelligence, to zero in on a problem. Now what? How do you actually tackle it strategically?
That's where this ideal problem solver we're diving into really shines, It gives us this framework. They call it surprise, surprise, ideal.
Right. And it's not like a rigid step-by-step thing.
Not at all. It's more of a cycle, a way of approaching those challenges. Think of it like a mental compass guiding you through that whole problem-solving journey.
I like that.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's break down this ideal acronym. We've got I for identify, which we've touched on, seeing those problems or even opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Then D for define,
Mm-hmm.
E for explore, A for anticipating.
Right. Gotta think ahead.
And finally, L for look back and learn.
And what's key here is it's not linear, You might find yourself circling back to some of these stages multiple times as you're working through a problem.
Makes sense. And speaking of identify, the book has this hilarious example about something I bet we've all experienced, those annoying bacon grease splatters when you're cooking.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. The bane of my existence in the kitchen.
Right. Most of us, we just kind of accept those greasy splatters as part of the bacon experience. But somewhere along the line, someone looked at that splatter and thought, wait a minute, problem. And bam, the splatter guard was born.
Such a simple invention, but genius,
A
right?
total genius. But it all came from identifying a problem that everyone else just lived with.
And that's the thing about expertise, right? It's a double-edged sword sometimes. The book talks about how, yeah, it makes you amazing at solving those familiar problems, but it can also make you blind to those problems that everyone in your field just accepts.
Because you're so used to doing things a certain way, you don't even think to question it anymore.
Exactly. So, listeners, here's something to chew on. Where do you see those accepted problems in your own world? At work, in your hobbies, those little annoyances everyone just shrugs at. Maybe there's a splatter guard waiting to be invented in your life.
I love that. It's all about shifting your perspective. But, okay, let's say you've identified your problem, whether it's bacon, grease level, or a bigger deal. How do you move forward? That's where define comes in.
Exactly. And defining the problem, it's not always as simple as it sounds. You really got to get clued on what you're trying to solve. What's the goal? How will you know if you've succeeded?
So it's not enough to be like, ugh, my email is out of control.
Nope. You got to ask yourself, what does out of control even mean? You want to hit inbox 0 every day. You want to spend less time overall on email. Do you need a system for those urgent messages so you don't miss them?
The more clearly you define it, the better your solution's going to be, right?
100%. It's the difference between, like, wandering around lost and having a detailed map.
And then comes the fun part, the E in ideal, explore.
Ah, yes. Brainstorming time. This is where you get to think outside the box, let those ideas flow, and come up with a bunch of potential solutions.
So with that email example, maybe you brainstorm using the 2-minute rule for quick replies, setting up folders, using filters to cut down on clutter.
Right. Don't judge your ideas at this stage. Just get them out there. But it's not just about brainstorming. You also have to start thinking critically about those ideas. Which ones are actually doable? Which ones fit with your overall goals and resources?
Right. There's no point dreaming up some elaborate system if you're never going to actually do it. So once you've explored your options, it's time to put on your prediction hat and anticipate.
Exactly. Anticipate is all about thinking ahead. What could happen if you go with each solution? What are the risks? What are the benefits? What could go wrong? And how can you prevent that?
So thinking back to that email problem, maybe you realize, okay, if I do this 2-minute rule, I might be interrupted more. Or if I set up a million folders, it's going to feel overwhelming at first.
And by anticipating those things, you can adjust, right? You can come up with a plan B so you're not caught off guard.
It's about being proactive instead of reactive. But even with all that, ideal isn't a one-and-done thing. It's not like you solve the problem and never think about it again.
Oh, absolutely not. That last stage, look back and learn, is crucial. It's all about reflection. What worked? What would you do differently next time?
It's that growth mindset in action. Every problem, whether you nailed it or struggled, it's a chance to learn and get even better for next time.
And that's the real magic of this whole ideal framework, isn't it? It's not just about finding the right answers. It's about becoming a better problem solver overall.
More adaptable, more resourceful.
Exactly.
Now, before we move on to some even more powerful techniques for leveling up your problem-solving skills, I want to take a quick detour into the world of knowledge itself.
Yeah.
How we learn, how we actually use what we know. So, we're back, ready to dive into the final stretch of this problem-solving deep dive. And this time, we're getting into, the nitty-gritty of knowledge itself.
Yeah, how we learn, how we actually use what we know. Because we talked about practical intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this book, it also points out a trap a lot of us fall into. Inert knowledge.
Inert knowledge. Okay, that sounds kind of stagnant.
Exactly. It's that stuff you've memorized, but you can't actually apply it in real life.
Yeah.
Think about a time you knew all the facts, but then when it mattered, you froze up.
Ooh, yeah. That reminds me of this online course I took on project management. I breezed through it, aced the quizzes, the whole deal. But then when I actually tried using those techniques on a real project, total brain fog.
And that's the thing. The book argues that true understanding, it's not just about memorizing a bunch of stuff. It's about making it meaningful, connecting it to your own experiences.
So how do we do that? How do we break free from this, inert knowledge trap? How do we make sure the information we're taking in actually sticks?
The book emphasizes this idea of why. Don't just accept things at face value. Ask, why is this important? How does this connect to what I already know? How can I use this today?
So it's not enough to just know, this is what a vein does.
Yeah.
You gotta ask, why is that difference between veins and arteries important to me, to my health?
Right. Exactly. It's about building those connections, not just having these random facts floating around in your head.
This is making me rethink how I approach learning.
Yeah.
Seriously. But okay, let's be real. Even when we're actively trying to connect the dots, remembering stuff in this crazy, fast-paced world, it's tough.
It is. And the book talks about some familiar memory techniques, like those acronyms, rhyming, all that. But they also introduce something I'd never heard of before that I find so interesting, the image name technique.
Okay, what's that image name? Tell me more.
So it's specifically for remembering names, which is something so many people struggle with. The key is you connect a person's distinctive feature to their name using a really vivid, memorable image.
So let's say I meet someone named Bill, and he has a really prominent nose. I might picture a dollar bill stuck to his nose.
Exactly. The more outlandish, the better. Our brains, they latch onto those weird, unusual things. The book even talks about this memory palace idea where you visualize these images in a familiar location.
Okay, that's kind of blowing my mind right now. I am terrible with names, so I'm 100% trying this. Listeners, if you do, let us know how it goes. But it makes me think remembering information, that's only part of the battle these days, right?
Yep.
Especially with how much information overload there is. We also have to be able to evaluate what we're taking in, to think critically.
Oh, 100%. And the book makes a really strong point about how even like dangerous ideologies, they gain traction when people just passively accept information without questioning it. Critical thinking, it's about asking those tough questions.
So not just, do I agree with this, but is this even true? Where's this information coming from?
Exactly. And it's about spotting those logical fallacies, those sneaky ways information can be twisted around. The book gave this example about advertising and how they use these invited inferences.
Invited inferences. Okay, you have to explain that one.
All right, so picture this. You're watching TV and an ad comes on. It says 70% of car owners prefer brand X. Sounds impressive, right?
Yeah, totally.
But what if that survey they did was only like 10 people?
Ooh, sneaky.
Right. Suddenly that statistic doesn't seem so impressive anymore.
It's like that saying there are three kinds of lies. Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Exactly. We have to be savvy about this stuff.
So how do we get better at this critical thinking thing? How do we make sure we're not falling for those traps?
It's about cultivating that healthy skepticism, Don't just accept things at face value, especially if it seems too good to be true.
Like that ancient coin example from the book. Listeners, imagine this. You just won $10,000. Amazing, right? And then this investor comes up to you with this can't-miss opportunity. He has this ancient coin he's willing to sell you for a steal, only $9,100. It's from, like, 42 BC. It looks totally legit. You'd practically be doubling your money.
But here's where that critical thinking comes in. Instead of getting caught up in the excitement, you start asking questions. How do you know this coin is real? What's your track record? Why are you in such a rush to sell it?
Exactly. It's about looking beyond the surface.
And sometimes it's about going even deeper than that, questioning the assumptions we've built our whole understanding on.
It's like how Copernicus challenged this idea that everyone just believed for centuries that the Earth was the center of the universe.
Yes, it was a radical idea back then, but by questioning that assumption, he completely revolutionized how we see the cosmos.
It really makes you think the assumptions we have, even those ones that feel so true, they can hold us back.
Totally. And by questioning them, we open up all these new possibilities, those aha moments that change everything.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into problem solving, what are the big takeaways you want listeners to walk away with today?
I think the biggest one is you don't have to be born a genius to be a great problem solver. It's about building up those skills, those mindsets.
We talked about the power of that ideal framework, from spotting those hidden problems to reflecting and constantly learning.
We dug into practical intelligence, turning knowledge into wisdom, and even some memory tricks.
And we saw how important critical thinking is questioning what we hear, especially those too good to be true things.
Yeah. It's about facing those challenges with curiosity, creativity, and that healthy dose of skepticism.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. What assumptions are you holding on to? The ones that might be limiting your problem-solving potential.
It's a question worth thinking about, a call to action, right?
Totally. Challenge yourself and embrace that power of becoming a truly ideal problem solver.
Love that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you've gotten some great tools and insights to tackle those challenges with confidence and a fresh perspective.
It's been awesome diving deep with you all.
And until next time, happy problem solving.
At the end of this podcast, please share your thoughts on the book, and if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.